Yeah.
Okay. On.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pradeep Khanna, and I am Executive Director Asia Pacific for the VRAR Association, which is the world's largest association focused on virtual and augmented reality. We have 70 plus chapters worldwide. We have 4,400 plus companies registered with us, and we have a community of tens and thousands of people. I am also the Sydney chapter president, as well as one of the global co-chairs for education. Apart from that, I am an adjunct professor at various institutions in Australia and Asia. I am on advisory boards. I am part of IEEE Global Group on Immersive Learning, as well as a CEO of a company called Global Mindset. We are living in historic times where we are seeing technology which has been around for the last 25 years heading towards a tipping point. What we are also seeing that there is a lot of curiosity about immersive technology or the likes of virtual reality and augmented reality. But we also find that the actual users of this technology, or for that matter, what is happening in education, people are still wanting to understand how best to leverage this technology. What are the benefits? How much is going to cost them to go into this? Can it help them in learning engagement? Can it help them in learning outcomes? There are a lot of questions that we come across as we are building a huge global community, and we've got quite a few initiatives which are focused on different segments of education and training. With this in mind, what we wanted to do was to kickstart an initiative which is for educators and by educators. How do we go about, how do we demystify VR and AR? So with this, I welcome you all and I introduce you all to our panelists of the day today. And this is the launch of the Educator K-12 series, which is happening today. Every 4 to 6 weeks, we will present to you different set of educators and with different kind of work that they are doing in immersive technology. First and foremost, I'm delighted to present to you Michael Belhard from Knox Grammar. Michael, can you please wave your hand to the audience?
Hello, everyone. Hello.
Michael is a senior school teacher and ICT integrator with Knox Grammar. He has 20 per years of experience in teaching in various schools across Australia. He is a Google certified teacher. And he is very interested in and wants to leverage technology to bring about innovation in the classroom. However, he does so keeping pedagogy in mind and ensuring that it is pedagogy which is driving technology. So, Michael, delighted to welcome you onto this panel.
Thanks for having me here. Thank you, Pradeep.
Next, I'm again delighted to introduce Grant Ward. Grant, can you please raise your hand and wave to the
Hi, everyone.
team?
Welcome.
Grant is head teacher of administration at Arena High School at New South Wales Central Coast. He has responsibility for IT and innovative technologies. Like Michael, he also comes with a strong pedagogy background and also someone who looks at how best to get the really enhance the education of the kids leveraging technology. It was under his leadership that the school introduced the Nexus program, which gets year 7 students introduced to various aspects of emerging technologies. And this has also been extended by having a technology leaders program where younger kids are also now introduced to technology. So once again, Grant, delighted to have you. And what we really want to bring about is, yes, these are two different schools from two different systems, of course, part of New South Wales education system and what each one of them is doing. The third speaker of the day today, I'm delighted to welcome Michael Midas. Michael, can you please wave your hand? And I will call you Michael M, and I will call Michael Bill and Michael B, just for clarity purposes. Where we are today in immersive technologies is a lot of people from the demand side, or like in this case from education side, want to know, how do I manage this? Where do I start? And this is where very often, you need somebody who's got a good handle over pedagogy and technology and can give a helping hand as somebody starts on a journey, as well as you go along the journey. And here, Michael is the managing director and co-founder of a company called Lumina Technologies, which has one of their divisions which is focused onto virtual and immersive technologies. They help different sectors, and out of which one is education and training. And they work a lot with different schools. But what I really like about Michael M is, yes, he works across different sectors, but he's got a lot of, involvement in the not-for-profit sector in terms of giving back to the society. So with this, let's kickstart the session. And the first question goes to Michael B. Michael B, can you tell us, what are you doing in immersive technologies or in VR, AR in your school?
All right, thanks, Pradeep, and hello, everyone. We're actually doing quite a few things at the moment. I like the concept that you talked about earlier about being along a journey, because our journey did start a couple of years ago using phones, using Google Cardboard, which we still use at the moment as well. But we've been lucky enough recently to be able to build what we call our iHub, or our innovation center. And as a part of that, we've been able to install a 360-degree igloo. So that brings 360-degree video or images into, or so to say, outside the headset into an immersive environment. And plus we were able to also purchase a class set of VR headsets. So with that, we've been able to sort of spread our wings a little bit in what we're able to do. And it's been a whole raft of ideas. So we've done things like virtual field trips, where we've gone out with the teachers to, for example, shopping centres, where our boys were taken on a field trip. And instead of taking the boys out to the field trip, we went out there and actually filmed that field trip, put it together in Premiere Pro. And the teacher was able to actually take those students through that field trip within our igloo and within the headsets as well. We have within our igloo the ability to access Google Street View through Google Earth. So we've had language teachers take our students or guide our students through different cities around the world that they're learning about. So they're actually able to take them on a real tour with those within those cities. We're looking at doing a live stream with AG. So our boys obviously aren't able to travel at the moment. So one of our teachers is taking a 360 camera and they'll be live streaming back into our igloo, and our boys will be able to view through that live stream in 360 what they would have been able to view live, but through that stream. We've also got science, English and geography coming through using their headsets to work on different geography assignments, different science projects. But we've also got students producing, so that's the consumption side, what's going on, but we also have students producing content. So we use Google Tool Creator and CoSpaces to have our Year 7s and 8s develop transdisciplinary tasks where, for example, our Year 7s had to develop a sustainable house and build that in CoSpaces. And then using their phones and Google Cardboard, they're able to walk through those spaces. We have our Years 8 and 9 using Unity in TAS, so in our technology subject, to develop virtual reality environments within Unity. We've also got one of our Year 12 students, or Year 11 now going into Year 12, who's actually going to be doing his major project using Unreal Engine and Blender to develop a environment within a virtual environment as part of his major project. So we got a lot of things going on, both from a consumer of information point of view to also a construction of knowledge aspect.
So very interesting, Michael B. You are not only dipping your toes into it, but you seem to be fully immersed into it. You know, gone from just producing to creating. You're looking at Unreal, Blender, and so on and so forth. And this raises a lot of questions in my mind, and I'll come back to you in a second. But in comparison, Grant, what are you doing in VR, AR 360?
Yeah, so look, I guess we're not as far down the path as what Michael is at his school with that integration into the teaching program. Our journey with this, just to put it into context, started a couple of years ago at Educator, where I first met Kingston from Verti, one of the vendors there. And we were actually myself and the deputy from the school were in search of a platform where we could film learning sequences in the classroom and then be able to look at what was happening in classrooms as a way of supporting our early career teachers. So we actually set out with the view of it being very much something for staff professional learning. And what we've actually ended up with is something which has been quite different to that. In fact, we haven't gone down that path at all as yet. We've actually been busy getting students to create their own content in the platform. So one of the things that we found it really useful for initially, the very first thing that we did with our VR platform was to build a tour of the school. And just to give you some context, if you're not too familiar with where Erina is, we're in a sort of a coastal environment here, which is highly competitive in terms of the schools that surround us. So we are a public school surrounded by 5 private schools. So having it's not necessarily a competitive advantage, but certainly being able to attract people to our school because of what we're doing here in our teaching programs is very important. So one of the things that we did was to invest in some headsets through our transition program. We developed a tour. Our Year 6 and our Year 5 kids that are potentially coming to the school do a virtual tour of the school to familiarise themselves with the facilities. And we continue to build that as something as part of transition. So I guess that's where we started sort of late 2018 and built on that last year. It's proving to be very handy at the moment. As Michael said, the kids can't get out at the moment, and certainly our kids aren't coming here to visit us. So having a virtual space to be able to broadcast that for our transition is really important. I guess the other thing that we're doing apart from using it for transition, as I mentioned, we're very focused on self-created content. So the platform that we have is not necessarily designed for the consumption of pre-made content. It's very much about kid created. So we're trying to push our kids into demonstrating their understanding of concepts and ideas by reflecting that in a virtual or 360 environment. And that's been messy. It's definitely loose, and it's certainly challenging for some of the educators in the school. Some people are quite threatened by having another tool that they have to learn and use in the classroom. And some people have sort of run a million miles from that and gone and reverted back to what they've always done in terms of getting kids to present stuff. So look, one thing that we developed last year was a water cycle VR experience to support our geography kids, and we've shared that through the Verdi platform. So we're sort of looking at doing more of those sorts of things. And certainly on the horizon is more of the taking our 360 cameras on excursions and doing what Michael was saying, where we're bringing kids back to experience that back at school, probably for our kids, for the kids that weren't able to participate in that activity for some reason or another. So, and to reflect on what happened during that field work. Just like Michael, we also have, cardboard. You can see a couple of those in the background there. We use those occasionally. The main thing that we use are some headsets that we purchased with Android phones, and we find those to be really useful. We've got those there as loan devices for teachers to use. In the AR environment, we've actually constructed our own augmented reality sandbox. And if you haven't seen one, I encourage you to have a look at it. It was developed at the University of California, and the full set of instructions are there to build your own. And we probably invested a small amount of money in a projector and a few bits and pieces to create a sandbox where the kids can manipulate the kinetic sand to build landforms and look at contour lines and landscapes. So that's something that we're really proud of, and that is highly engaging for the kids and fits in 7 to 12 in terms of our curriculum. And we also recently purchased Merge Cube. So I know these things aren't necessarily high end, but they're certainly consumption items that we can easily use in the classroom and are very accessible to the teachers that we've got here that can be a bit threatened by new and emerging things.
Thank you very much, Grant. And I'm delighted that there is so much of audience participation. We've already got 4 questions come in. But before I come to the questions, let me ask Michael. Michael, we've had perspectives from Grant, who's working in the public school system. We've heard perspectives from Michael B., who's working in the independent school system. Now, you work across different schools. What are you seeing in terms of what is happening in VRARA across schools?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. So generally speaking, we're brought in to help educators to integrate technology from a technical perspective, to advise and to consult, to train teachers and educators on how to use it effectively in the classroom and without disruption to the classroom as well, which is extremely important. And we've seen pretty much everything, everything from really basic smartphone systems or smartphone-based systems to integrated platforms with content as all part of it integrated together. And we also help with finding more sources of content for the educators as well. But all the way up to more sophisticated systems as well. So it's a mixed bag of virtual reality and augmented reality. Haven't been brought in for anything that's a mixed reality project of any sort at this stage yet. Finding more right now that we're being brought in to help in more with all of the basics. Just let's get started. Let's just spark something.
Michael M., your voice is dropping out in and out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me a little bit better? A little bit better now?
Yeah.
So we're being brought in, across the entire spectrum, from the very basic stuff all the way through to the more sophisticated. And I think that what we're finding more so than anything else is that we're finding that we're just getting the spark started. So let's get something, just let's start with something really small and basic and then just take it from there. And so that usually starts with a smartphone-based system or something maybe for the library. We might, have, something like a headset like this, for instance, and put it couple of them to the library. You know, just those kinds of things. Just start something small and then move from there. We are finding that a lot of schools are very, very interested in creating their own content, and you know, through 360 video content in particular, as Grant and Michael have both said. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. And
okay, thanks, Michael.
exciting.
And
Yeah.
let me go to the questions first, because there are quite a few coming thick and fast. And this one is for you, Michael B. And this is coming from Alex from Melbourne. Which headsets are you using?
Yeah, so we've just recently so we've only had our headsets since about May or June. So again, we're not that far down the track, but like I said, cardboard before that. We're using Lenovo. We have 6 Lenovo headsets and we have 9 Pico headsets. So we went for a bit of a split there, mainly because through both headsets, we also, I suppose I should premise that as well, as we also decided not to go with a whole class set, and that's proven to have been a really successful decision for us. Not only did it save us a bit of money, obviously, but what we were really looking at was best classroom practice. We actually did some research into this with some teachers and trying to work out how to best use it. And by buying only half a class amount of headsets, it means that we always get our boys to work in buddies. So when they're working on a project or they're working on a worksheet, looking at whatever they're looking at within the VR environment, they've actually got a buddy sitting outside who's asking them questions and they're answering questions based on what they're viewing. So we're really cognizant of trying not, of not having a whole class just sitting there with their headsets on and the teacher just looking at 25 students in headsets. So the Lenovo's and the Picos were able to access all of the content that we bought across those 2 different headsets. We're also able to access YouTube through those headsets, but we got the Lenovo specifically because we're also able to access Google Expeditions and CoSpaces through those headsets, which has been great. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now the next question also for you, Michael. This is, could you please explain the Igloo a bit more? How big is it?
So our Igloo is 6 meters in diameter. We actually just had a video conference a couple of days ago with Deakin University. So I guess anybody who's down that way, Deakin University have just installed a 9 meter Igloo down there as well. Yeah. So ours is 6 meters in diameter, and basically, yeah, we are able to showcase YouTube 360s through there. Again, in consultation with the developers with SmartStone, from whom we've received our headsets and content. We're looking at being able to bring out the content that's within the VR headsets and actually play them through our Igloo as well, which means a teacher can talk to the students about what they're going to see in the headsets before they're inside the headsets. So we've found that really, really useful. And I did notice in the questions somebody's asked about the live streaming. The live streaming is going to happen through a live 360 link through YouTube. We're in the process of actually doing that, so I can't actually say that one's happened yet, but we're hoping to do that in the next couple of days, that live stream.
Good. The next 2 questions are also around the Igloo. And Martin is asking about camera, network connection, software for Igloo. And Stephanie is asking, can you please explain Igloo a bit more? How big is it? Kind of a thing. So I think you've answered both of them. And in Stephanie and Martin, if you have anything more later on, please feel free to put up your questions. Then moving on to Barman, he says, I have the same question. What technologies used for streaming? Oh, we've covered that. Now, Adinda, she is asking, I'm very impressed with the VR AR technology that the panelists explained. I have a question. Is the VR and AR technology accessible to all students? What about students who study in undeveloped areas? So Michael, you first, and then Grant. Grant, this will also be applicable for you because you are on the Central Coast in terms of where you're not in the city per se, but I'll go for Michael B first. Michael, please respond.
Absolutely. I'll answer that one very quickly by explaining a specific project that we're working on. We work with an organisation called Open, which is One Planet Education Network. And what our boys are doing, they're building CO2 sensors for a school in Goma. So this is a co-curricular activity after school. Goma has an active volcano that could erupt any time. And we're working together with a school in Goma and building these CO2 sensors. We're going to ship them over, and we're looking to the Internet of Things to be able to data analyze the CO2 to see how that volcano is actually traveling, and if we can see an eruption about to happen. As part of that, what we're actually doing is we're using co-spaces to build VR environments that showcase how we live in our different countries. So the students in Goma are actually able to access co-spaces as well. We're building within co-spaces our VR. So we're building examples of our parks, our houses, our local environments, and so are they. We're going to exchange those and we're going to be able to view those either in Goma, probably through Google Cardboard headsets, on our end through our VR headsets. And that's really going to bring that empathetic side to this project, to get our students to actually understand how these children are living under this threat of a volcano, and be able to walk through VR environments or 360 images that these students have developed for us is really going to build their understanding of the authenticity of this project, I think. So I'll leave it with that.
Over to you, Grant. Do you want to add on?
Yeah, look, I guess ours is much more of a local level thing in terms of being. I mean, we're in an area that's easily accessible to Sydney, I guess. But I think the advantage for us is being able to transport kids in a virtual environment to somewhere that we can't get to. So I guess I'm not too sure if this is correctly answering the question, but for students in those sort of, I guess, remote areas or disadvantaged areas, if they're able to get their hands on a very simple piece of technology like a cardboard, and even a phone that will work with a Google Expeditions or any of those things, then they can be transported somewhere else and access those things that kids in more advantaged environments could access. So I guess our focus at Erina is really about developing experiences for kids ourselves that fits in with our teaching programs, so we can transport them to other places. And just in history, at the end of last year, we did a unit of work on ancient Egypt, and we were able to obtain some images of inside the pyramids, which we were able to get the kids to develop some content around to transport them to another time and place. So I guess I hope that answers part of the question, but certainly we're finding that to be quite a powerful thing to give all kids access.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll come back to you, Michael M., but there's another interesting question which is coming about. Digital literacy of teachers is an interesting issue all over the world. And we have Karina from Perth. How do you get over the hurdle of teacher uncertainty? How do you get the teachers on board? How do you socialize? So who wants to go first? Michael M., do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. I think there needs to be at least a willingness from the teachers to give it a shot, just to give it a shot. To be honest, though, I really do find that that there is a positivity around it. They're excited about it. Teachers, educators are excited about it, just as excited as students, and everybody else is excited about it too. it can be, and it was one thing that Grant mentioned earlier, is that it can be a little bit daunting because it's a new technology and it can be a little bit finicky. Like it's not simple, you know. But to be honest, it can also be just a simple step, like a really simple first step, a smartphone-based type system, which is how I got into VR in the first place. And I'm pretty sure most of of my contemporaries, most of my colleagues and people that I know in virtual reality probably started with a smartphone-based system of some sort and just went, wow. So I think it just needs to go from that wow to, wow, I think we can do something here. And how do you do it? Well, look, you know, do you consult with someone, you know, who is, you know, someone like me, or do you just pick up the phone and call another school and just say, what are you guys doing? Do you want to do something together? It's really just that first step, and that's all it is. It's to get past that, you know, that hurdle. It's just about saying, I like it. Let's find out what we can do with it.
Very good. Do you want to add anything to this, Grant and Michael B? Grant, you first.
Yeah, look, I could add to that. I mean, as I mentioned before, we've got, I guess, people that are extremely good educators in our classrooms, but at times reluctant to take a risk because they see risk as potential failure in front of kids. So what we're trying to do here is to develop a kind of fail forward mentality. I mean, if you fail, you're still moving forward by learning through that failure. And to be honest with you, what we're finding is the kids are really appreciative of the teacher giving it a go, and the kids will support the teacher in finding solutions anyway. So I guess that's, you know, changing the way that people approach it, as it's not something that, you know, if you fail, then you're out. You fail, you learn from it and you move on. The other thing that we've introduced this year, as you mentioned in the intros there, Pradeep, was we've put together this year a tech leaders program, and this has come from some demand as part of our transition. Parents saying to us, I've got this child who is tech crazy and would like to, at primary school, they've been doing all of these things to help out around the place. We've expanded on that, got kids to nominate for the program, and part of their role that we're building at the moment is that they will support the teachers in the classrooms as well when required. So, for instance, if a teacher is using our Verdi platform with kids for the first time, these tech leaders will have enough skills to be able to go in there and support the teacher for a couple of hours to get them over that hump. And finally, the guys from Verdi, we partnered up with Verdi. They've been incredibly supportive for us. So actually getting some good relationships with your provider is really good. The guys from Verdi have been incredibly supportive of our school and have attended professional learning days that we've done for staff, and they've just been here for us. So they're there as a support network. They're readily, sort of easily accessible. And that's really helping to break down that barrier for us for those reluctant people.
Okay, and as this is an important question, that's why I will get all the three panelists to answer this. And Michael B, any comments that you would like to add on to what Michael M and Grant have said?
Yeah, I agree with everything they say. There's some very relevant points. Look, I actually think that technology, I've been doing this for a little while now, working as an ICT integrator. I think technology has actually come over the edge now, or tipped over. And I think it's much easier to access and use. And the angst that teachers had to have in regards to using that technology is a little bit it's not as necessary anymore because the technology is so easy to use. I'll give you an example of that. I actually, you guys might have heard about the storms that happened on the Central Coast and a lot of the coastal erosion that's occurred. Now, I live on the Central Coast, and I actually surf exactly where all that erosion took place. Now, I was walking along the beach on Saturday, and I actually took 360 images just using the Street View app on my camera. And I was able to take those 360 images just by pointing my phone very easily. Beautiful images occurred from that. And then I was able to go into a program called Google Tool Creator, or CoSpaces, which are very, very simple to use. And I was able to upload that content and showcase it to students and teachers. So I guess my point is that I really think that the technology is much easier to use and it's very user-friendly in comparison to what it might have been, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I think that's helped us tip our teachers over the edge and given them a willingness to have a go in that. And I think the other thing with us also, and I guess that's the way that Knox has gone about with the development of the Innovation Centre, is that you have two integrators, myself and my partner, Mark Kelly, who are there to help teachers, and teachers can come to us and we can help them design lessons that will work within this environment and actually get them to use the Innovation Hub to showcase those lessons.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Now, there's another very interesting question. And folks, we have audience across Asia Pacific. We have Sagar from India asking that how long should the exposure be? Should it be 1 minute? Should it be 1 hour? What is the typical time span? We already have an answer from Alex from Melbourne, but I would also quickly ask all the three panelists, just give me the number of minutes. So starting with Michael B.
Okay, so our lessons predominantly so far have been a split lesson between our Igloo and our VR headsets. So at the most, up until this stage, students have been within the VR headsets probably for only about 10 minutes. They probably have had the VR headsets for 20 minutes, as I said earlier. They work with a partner on a worksheet, 10 minutes one student's in, 10 minutes the other student's in, and the other half of the class tend to be at this point inside our Igloo. We do have other students that, as I said, our Year 12 student who's working on his own project. But look, I tend to find that the VR headset doesn't really tend to stay on the students' heads for more than that 5 to 10 minutes, because even if they're working in something like CoSpaces or they're building something in Unity, they're basically working on their computer, popping the headset on to have a look and see what they've done, popping that headset off again, and then continuing their work. So we don't have students in there for an hour, for example, or for half an hour, or even for 25 minutes.
Okay. And Grant, what about you?
Look, I agree with Michael. I think 10 minutes for us would be about the limit. Nothing that we've created would require a child to be in a headset for longer than that. And the way that we utilise it is that you can either use it in VR mode or 360 mode anyway on a phone. So if the kids are feeling a little bit, woozy for being in the headset for too long, they can go back to 360. The first time I used the headsets with the kids in 2018, I got a bit carried away and we did a whole lot of stuff for a period. And I ended up with 2 kids in sick bay by the end of the period that had to sign out and go home. So I learned very quickly that, it can certainly upset upset your center of balance.
Okay. Now, Michael M. Quickly, only minutes.
Very, very quickly, I'll say this. Firstly, there are 3 parts to this that I'll answer. The first is the younger the child, the shorter the period in the headset, and even to the point of take any straps that are associated with the headset, just take them off. And so that way they cannot put it onto their head. The younger children, they should just put it over their eyes and then take it off and say, oh, that was really cool, and then put it on again and take it off again. So it should only be just seconds at a time, really. The second part of it is that it comes down to what's being taught. So as the lessons become more sophisticated, more complex, you're talking about STEM, or you might be talking about something in the visual arts, or whatever it might be. That's for the older children, of course. Yes, I would suggest that they can probably go for a little bit longer. And so I don't really have much of an issue with that in terms of the safety, sort of concern. But the third part is the most important part, I think, and that is that it needs to come from a lesson planning perspective. And I've been to Knox, I've worked closely with Michael and I've seen the way Knox use it. I love it. I think it's fantastic. The best I've seen. And that is that, as Michael has suggested, so you've got one student on the headset, the other one's taking notes, and then they swap over at a certain point, and then this one's put the headset on and they're taking notes. And they're comparing, you know, learning, and they're learning from each other. And so that way it becomes collaborative, and also it becomes short as well. So I think that for the younger children, it has to be short. The older children, it can be longer. That's totally fine. But plan around the lesson, like, you know, figure out what it is that you're going to do, and then, yeah, work it out from there. A few minutes at a time is more than enough, really.
Okay. Thank you. Now, this gets me to a related question, which has not been asked by anybody, but it's a logical question. And starting with you, Grant, what is the youngest age in your school who has exposed to these immersive technologies?
The youngest kids in our school would be some of the kids in year 7 are 11 years old, 11 or 12 years old. But as I mentioned before, we have it as part of our transition program. So year 5 and 6 kids have an opportunity to have a look at the content. So I guess some of those kids could be, you know, like 10 years of age in a year 5 classroom. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Michael B?
Yeah, no, we obviously within the senior school, you know, we go across the whole campus, 7 to 12, have utilised them at different times. Yeah, in our primary school, they have their own set of class VR headsets, and I think that they're quite well used across a broad spectrum of grades down there as well. Yep.
Okay. So, Michael M., are you seeing much use in the primary school?
Yeah. Having said that, I think that I tend to advise to be very careful by the time you sort of, you know, get to about maybe sort of grade 3, you know, year 3 sort of level, is when you can start to use it. And one of the reasons I say that is because a lot of headsets don't have this little thing here, which is what's called an IPD. So an adjuster, so that way you can adjust the focal lenses. And if they don't, we've got to keep in mind that children's eyes, because their interpupillary distance is different to ours, we might look at it and it'll be totally in focus, but they won't, you know. And so that could lead to the sicknesses and all of that. I would say probably the youngest that I've exposed is probably about maybe say 7 years old, and only for a few seconds at a time.
Okay, good, thank you. Again, very topical question which has come up from Tim from Adelaide. He's asking, how do you handle hygiene in the current COVID environment? Specifically more, I suppose the question is generally and more so specifically in the current, although I don't know how much is the usage of immersive technologies in school at this particular point in time, but a very, very relevant question. So Michael B., how do you handle hygiene?
Oh, no, absolutely. Very important at the moment. So obviously, all of these activities take place in our iHub. So we don't actually, none of our equipment leaves our iHub. It stays within our iHub. And one of myself or Mark are always around. Students have to sanitize their hands before they come into the iHub. Once they access the VR headsets, we have a bottle of wipes that they access, and then once a student has finished it, they access one of those wipes, wipe down the headsets without. And we're very strict about this. Please do not wipe the lenses. Do not wipe on those lenses. And the controller as well, and then pass it on to the other student. And then when that student's finished, they'll clean those out as well. Most of our students have their own headphones, so we ask students to bring their own headphones in. And yeah, that pretty much covers how we do that.
Okay. Well, what about you, Grant?
Yeah, it looks very similar sort of situation to Michael there. We have pretty strict sanitation in place now, wipes and sanitizer in each classroom. To be honest with you, before COVID, we were passing headsets like the ones behind me around between kids without a thought of it. As long as it wasn't touching my face, I wasn't too concerned about kids sharing a sweaty forehead with each other. But I think this is going to be the thing that we do now from here on in. I don't think that's going to change post-COVID. So I think that's going to just be part of what we practice. And I think it's good practice.
Okay, thank you. Michael M., are you seeing in use of any ultraviolet solutions for keeping the head-mounted devices clean?
There are a couple of solutions that you can get. I mean, look, what the other gentlemen have been saying, the other panelists have been saying, Michael and Grant, as long as you're wiping it down, you're wiping down any controllers as well, and it gets wiped down well before it passes on to the next person, I think it's absolutely fine. You can get protectors. I don't have any to show right now. I'm sorry about that. But you can get face protectors so that you put it on. It's almost like a tissue that sort of sits above it. I'm not a big fan of those things because they tend to soak up the sweat, and after they soak it, they pass it on to the actual felt around the headset. So I'd much rather just go, look, you know what? There's going to be sweat that goes onto that, onto that protector. The best thing to do is just to wipe it from one, child to the next, or from one student to the next. That's just the best way to do it.
Okay, thank you. Now a question from Tara. This is also very good, and it really comes down to engagement. Mm-hmm. And the question is that, can you kind of talk about a case where a student was not interested in something, but they got interested after going through VR, AR solutions? Who would like to take this question? Michael M., Grant, or Michael B?
I'll just take it very quickly. Because I'll be honest with you, it's not really my side of it where I'm not an educator, but we did a demo once at, I believe it was Kelvin Grove. And one of the students there, there's a couple of examples. One of the students there is just not much of a talker, and she's quite reserved. And she was just like, wow, this is great. And she got involved in the class afterwards. It was like, I saw this, and, it was amazing. So that was one that was really good to see. It was good to see afterwards when I spoke to the teacher said it was just amazing to see her step out, which was great. And then there was another one, which was quite funny because it was a different girl. The girl put the headset on, and she was just like, wow, that's amazing. Oh, that's great. That's great. And they said, well, what was your, the best, what's your favorite thing about school in general? And she said, going home. And then she said, but not today. So I thought that was quite cool. So anyway, I'll leave it to the other ones.
No audio there, Pradeep.
Sorry, we missed you, Pradeep. I think you're on mute. There you go.
There we go.
Fine.
Michael B., do you want to add on?
Yeah, look, we're pretty early in this whole process, so I'm not gonna sit here and say that absolutely every student jumps up and down with joy when they're jumping into VR. We've had quite a few classes through, having said that, and we do survey. We have asked our teachers to present our students with a small survey. And look, reading through those surveys, the responses are pretty much like Michael has said. They're pretty much saying, this is a great lesson, best lesson I've had today. But what I'm more interested in, there are comments within that comment bank that actually say, that was really good because I learned something from that, or I saw something that I hadn't seen before, or some concept came across to me that I didn't quite understand before. So when I read those comments, I get quite passionate and quite interested with that technology, because that's what it's all about. But look, early days for us, but it's been nothing but a positive experience from my point of view.
Grant, anything you want to add?
Look, I guess I couldn't really add too much to what Michael's saying there. We're the same, early adopters. Early in the process of adopting this, and we're seeing really positive things when kids jump into the environment. And I think really, I mean, it's just for us, it's part of the teaching toolkit. So, if every kid was in the VR environment every lesson each day, I mean, they'd be probably saying, not again. But this is something that, that when you're able to present experiences to kids like that at the right time for the right purpose, like any good pedagogy, it's a success.
Okay, look, I see a couple of questions which are along the same lines in terms of, is there a concept that we can kind of carry out and showcase in VRAR? And to a certain extent, we have covered up. I will now ask another question, which if I weren't actually implementing a AR VR solution in school, which come first in my mind, do I need bucket loads of money? Or can I just start with my, the coin saving box that I have, So how much money do I require? I know it is like talking how big or how long is the piece of string, but yeah, I would be keen to understand. What about you, Grant? What kind of buckets of money did you use?
Small ones. Look, I guess we started with largely donated cardboard headsets to start with. I think our first headsets came through an Anzac Day initiative where they developed a tour of the Anzac Museum, or a museum that had Anzac memorabilia in it, and they gave cardboard headsets to schools a few years ago. So that was our first free ones, and the kids were just using them themselves. The problems with kids were the kids didn't have data, so I was hotspotting my phone so kids could access the data. So initially, zero cost, but our journey hasn't been an expensive one overall. So for our headsets, the headsets that are behind me here, they're probably about, they've got headphones built into them. They're about $20 each. The phones we bought were Android phones for possibly around $200, $220 each. We bought 10 of those as part of our transition program. So you get creative sometimes in where you find buckets of money, but if you can, convince the boss that there's a purpose for a particular thing, then sometimes the boss might be agreeable to tap that bucket. Our annual commitment, so that's our startup commitment. Our annual commitment is our subscription to our provider, Verdi. So I'm not too sure what our annual commitment is there, but it's very affordable. It's a license for each kid, and in the scheme of things, we are a lead school with that particular organisation, so we get some probably a better rate through the guys, which we appreciate. But it's not an excessive amount of money to access to access the technology.
So would I say that you would have got by in about $2,500?
Yeah, so $2,500 in equipment, and then an annual commitment of our subscription costs.
And how much would that be?
I think it would be less than a couple of grand a year. At this stage. So
that's a reasonably good handle on that. So you got a capex of about $2,500, and then maybe about between $1 to $2,000 as a subscription fee, which is an ongoing cost.
And look, I manage the technology budget at the school. I've got a fairly significant budget in terms of our platforms that we for administrative stuff and classroom platforms. So our VR component of that just sort of adds into that licensing bucket. A lot of companies will charge on a per head arrangement, and they'll based on enrollment data. We're very comfortable with the position that we're in at the moment to be paying them the money that we do, because we know that we get storage for each kid, support, and there's there's kind of no limits for us at the moment in terms of, if we have one more child arrive in the school, we need to adjust our licensing. So it's very compatible with what we need at the school, and we create what we want within the platform. So we find that really good.
Okay, Michael B. What did you start with, small pennies, or like what was your capex like?
Yeah, no, we basically started with no pennies at all as well, really. I mean, we started with cardboard. and students using their phones, and we use that for quite a long time. Actually, we used CoSpaces, and so that has a yearly subscription that runs through our IT department. The iHub is the iHub; it's the innovation centre. A lot of the budgetary, well, all the budgetary stuff for technology actually goes through the IT department. So that's the head of IT, who's different and separate to my role. So we did that for a long time. The school then saw, through the students and the way students were using that technology, saw that there was a need for us to, I suppose, provide more diversification in this area of technology for our students, hence the iHub started up. And I guess, within that, obviously we have the Igloo, which is probably, our biggest expense in there. Having said that, however, we have cohorts of 350 students in each year group, just about. So we have an Igloo. The concept behind that was, if we're bringing students through, we're more able to bring greater numbers of students through an immersive environment through something like an Igloo with the numbers that we have. And that was a little bit of the thought process behind that. We only have 15 headsets. So we only have 15 of the actual headsets. As I said, we have Lenovo's and Picos. I think the Picos, there might have been about 800. They're $800 a piece, and the Lenovo's are around about the same. But that's pretty much it. We have a couple of Insta X1 360 cameras as well. And then back to the Igloo, we have Igloo is actually the company through which we bought our Igloo. They're called Igloo Vision. They're based in Melbourne. And we have an ongoing subscription to their to the software that they provide us to run the Igloo as well.
So the bottom line seems to be start small, and then as you grow along, you can increase and integrate with an overall innovation center where you can get access a much higher budget also.
Yeah, and I think what works for us, and we are lucky to be able to have that. The fact that we have an innovation centre, the fact that we have two dedicated people within that centre, means we're not going out to teachers. Teachers are coming to us, and we provide an environment where the technology is ready to go. We've all, any of us that have been teaching for more than 5 years, know the importance of being able to walk into a classroom and the technology needs to work for you. That whiteboard needs to turn on, it needs to work. And, they come into an environment where we ensure things work. We get it all going. We work with them curriculum wise to see where it can fit into their curriculum and work as part, when they're putting their new programs together, we work with them. So that environment becomes very helpful. Yeah.
Okay. And Michael, since you work across a range of schools, what kind of a budget should one start with?
I like to work with a comfortable budget that the school has first, and then try to work a solution around that. That's generally how I like to work it. I don't like to sort of go in there and say, you're going to need X amount of dollars, because I find that every school is a little bit different with needs, and also that many schools are using different solutions, like a multitude of solutions. It's not just one size fits all type of situation. So I tend to find that some schools are quite open to sort of saying, look, I don't want to throw more than, say, a few $1,000s at this, to begin with, or something like that. You can do something very, very decent with that, extremely decent with that. I've also worked with schools that will, be very, very open to the idea of a pilot of some sort with a startup company or something, some sort of a platform that's just trying to get from point A to point B and try something out in the market. So I have a lot of access to that, and so we can help in that sort of way as well. And I think that's one of the key sort of aspects of working with someone like me, is that I can find those sorts of things and plug them in and say, look, you know what, we could try this, It hasn't been tested out yet. We're looking for someone to test it out, and you can have it for free for the first year at least, and then see how it all goes.
So what I hear is that you are equally comfortable with somebody, or you could get something decent going in less than $3,000.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, what is the highest amount of budget that you worked with a school? Is it 100,000? Is it 10,000? What is it?
It's probably closer to the 100.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Love it.
But having said that, there's more volume down at the lower end.
Okay.
And I'm not. So there's sophisticated, equipment that you can get that's way beyond 100, and then there's equipment that you can get that does a job extremely effectively for just a few $1,000s, as Grant is saying, and Michael was saying very early on. And I was working on a special needs school very recently. We put a quote in for, I think it was $3,000, and that was going to get them some Oculus Go's. That was going to get them the full platform. It was going to get them a few phones and smartphone-based type system as well. It was going to be a mixture, So
okay.
But
So
I find that I need to find the right amount first and say, look,
sure.
I'm comfortable,
Sure.
and I'll find you a good solution for that.
Before I go on, I'll just respond to a couple of questions which are coming in. I'm so happy to see people shooting up questions. This one was from Robbie. He wanted to know if there is some published paper or something which talks about the age of students. What is the minimum age that students should be seeing getting into VRAR or something related. And thank you very much, Alex from Melbourne, who's responded and given a link to that. So I appreciate. Now, another question which has come up from Christian, and he is asking that, okay, look, all of you guys are doing some very, very interesting work, but is there something that you would like to see which is not currently on offer? And this one is for Michael B to kickstart.
Michael B to kickstart. Something that's...
something that you think should be there, but it is not part of the solution in VR/AR at the moment. Yeah,
look, to me, what needs to happen in the VR environment, and it will, is that the headsets need to become lighter, and they need to become, basically, they need to become a little bit cheaper. Because what we're looking at is we want this to work on scale, and I guess that leads me into also saying one thing that's not around at the moment that we're looking at, and that really interests us at Knox, is that concept. Well, it is around. Is that concept of online environments through the use of the VR technology. So we're looking quite closely and want to work with schools in regards to being able to get our students to collaborate within a global setting with our VR headsets on. We did a trial just the other day in a program called Engage, where myself, Michael, and actually someone from HTC were inside a classroom. I was able to write on a whiteboard, post up YouTube clips, put a PowerPoint up in a room that looked exactly like a normal classroom. And I'd love to see more of that happening. I'd love to see, for example, a languages classroom where if we're studying French, we're doing it with French students in France, where they're able to talk about their cultures as well as express themselves in their languages. These classrooms also give you the opportunity, for example, within this Engage program, one of the classrooms you can go to is the Mars landscape. So you can actually take the students to the Mars landscape, and the Curiosity rover is there in front of you. You can press on different parts of the Curiosity rover and actually find out what's going on. So I guess my answer to that question is, getting it on scale so that we can actually start working within an environment that it's going to allow our teachers just to take the students anywhere. AR-wise, you can bring up a dinosaur in front of them and actually show them what you're talking about. You can bring up fossils, you can bring up CO2 sensors and have them build them within these environments and collaborate and work together. So I think that's where we're trying to head as an organisation, and something that I think will happen, but I can't wait for it to happen, because it's just, we always talked about breaking down the four walls of the classroom, and I think this is the real start.
Let me add to what Michael B has said. You see, what we are seeing is with the rollout of 5G, we'll have a quantum jump in the kind of AR, VR applications. And what we have to do is to really get the technology out of the way. There is no point of saying 6 degrees of freedom, and really, who cares about 6 degrees of freedom? And the reality is that nobody is really interested in an AR, VR solution per se. What they want to know is that how is the learning engagement happening? How would the learning outcomes being impacted? So coming back to now, Grant, is there something that you would like to see which is not currently available?
Oh, look, I think probably I can't think of anything too outrageous, but I think it probably leverages off what Michael was saying there a moment ago. Is that you know, the thing that I've always struggled with is content access, being able to access sufficient 360-degree images of things that I'd want to take the kids to, and I think that that it will come, but at the moment there doesn't seem to be an easy way to be able to access that. So I mean, we've got our own Insta cameras and a GoPro Fusion camera, and we can go and capture those things, and we do capture our own scenes, but it's really difficult sometimes to find the right scene for the right purpose when we're teaching across a global landscape. So I think content is a bit of a barrier at the moment for us, especially when it's self-created content. And I suppose that, you know, years ago as a geography teacher, we constantly use Google Earth and Google Maps, and we've got other, the Spatial Information Exchange, which is a mapping product provided by the New South Wales government. We're constantly jumping in and out of those things to talk about geography and even history. Today I was teaching some stuff on the Industrial Revolution, was able to jump into one of these things and look at satellite images and how they've changed over time. That's now just part of what we do. That wasn't available to me easily like that, you know, 10 years ago. So I suspect that it'll just become quite fluid in the way that we transition between what we're doing in the classroom, a discussion, and then say, hey guys, let's pick up our headsets. I'm going to broadcast this image to you that I'm able to provide for you easily. And you can take that natural progression in a lesson like you would through a discussion, in a discussion. But those things are the barriers at the moment. You've got to be so prepped up for that experience that it almost becomes a little bit sterile, I suppose, in terms of having everything at the ready.
Sure. Let me kind of, before I go to you, Michael, and let me also kind of tell you one of the challenges at the moment in working in VR, AR is nobody knows that who else is doing what.
Yeah.
Therefore, you know, it becomes very difficult to validate the journey that one is on, you know, and it's like, you know, being on your own without knowing who else is doing anything like that. That's why you see we are building up these communities so that we can share, you know, we can get people talking to each other, understand what are the good practices. I don't even call them best practices because there are no benchmarks at the moment, you know.
Yeah, correct.
And to look at what are lessons learned and so on and so forth, you know. So Michael M,
yeah,
anything that you think you want but is not available at this particular point in time in K-12?
I want 5G bad. But apart from 5G, look, I think taking it one step further from what Michael Beilhartz has suggested, which is the collaborative learning space, and everybody.
Your voice is dropping.
Oh, sorry, I need to go a little bit closer to the microphone. So taking it a little step further from what Michael Beilhartz said, which was that we get people into a live classroom and have kids from all over the world being taught in one particular place, virtual environment. I'd actually like to see students and teachers all collaborating on a project. You know, so creating something, creating another environment, let's create another world together with kids from this school and this school and this school and, something like that. So I'd really like to see how that can work, because that's something that is currently not really being investigated that much, and where VR can be extremely powerful because it allows everybody to immerse into it together and build parts of it. You guys build this part of the island, we'll build this part of the island, and we can all, work on things together. So I'd really like to see something like that. 5G is going to make a lot of things possible, most definitely. I'd also like to see a lot more Indigenous content. I'd really love to see a lot more Indigenous content than what's currently available right now, and that's just a simple thing. Anybody who's got access to Indigenous content, I'd really love to hear from you. I have a couple of good content providers, but I'd love some more. Just more collaboration between schools is what Michael Beilhartz had mentioned, but just love to see more of this. Let's all get into the same class together. You can do a field trip together. You can just do so much in this space. It allows for so much more than what you can currently get from a physical space right now. So that's what I'd like to see. Field trips together, in Myanmar, or something similar together.
Oh, great. Now, I saw a comment from Tara. Tara works in the PR comm space. Well, there is tons happening over there, Tara, and we can always take it offline in terms of what kind of opportunities are there. Now, I see a very, very interesting question which is coming from Sagar from India. He is saying that in the current COVID environment, when most of the classes are happening online, what is the best way to use immersive technologies? Is web VR or web AR is one of the ways, or what is it? Come on, guys, and this is first open to you, Michael B. We are talking now about, yes, in some cases, students may still be coming to classes, but how do we best use VR, AR in an online environment?
Well, I've said it before. I think one of the best programs to have a look at is a program called CoSpaces. You jump into CoSpaces and you can have students working in groups in that area, working on a project. So we run IL or transdisciplinary tasks or integrated learning assessment tasks in years 7 through to 9. As I said, this year, our year 8 task is going to be that the Earth is blown up. There's 50 people have survived. NASA has found a black hole behind, a wormhole behind one of the moons of Jupiter. And this is where a spaceship's going to go and the humanity is going to reestablish themselves. Our boys are going to be going into CoSpace of 4 to 6, and they're going to be building those sustainable environments. The teacher can jump into every group. There's coding available in CoSpaces. There's physics available in CoSpaces. You can bring in images. You can bring in animated GIFs. You can bring in documentation. You can take pictures of JPEG pictures of PowerPoints and bring them in. So it becomes a really immersive environment that can be viewed just on the laptop, where you can walk around with that within that environment, or within a headset. So they can do a multitude of things within there. So if I was having to teach from home, and I wanted to do that kind of a task, well, our students will be doing that. It would be in CoSpaces. I'd also throw in Google Tool Creator as something to have a look at as well.
Okay, so over to you, Grant. Now, I suppose this is now entering into the last question of the session. We've already been going for 1 hour and 15 minutes, and I've really enjoyed the session hell of a lot. The question is that when we look at education in the K-12 space, there are so many different stakeholders. You got the student, you got the teachers, you got the parent, you got the school, you got the community. How do you, and each of these stakeholder groups have different expectations or understanding of VRAR. So how best do you manage the different stakeholders?
That's for me, Pradeep, that's right. Yeah, so I guess in our environment, the community that we work in is incredibly supportive of whatever we do. So there's no barriers here for us in terms of us exploring new things. And I don't think, like, I honestly don't think at this stage our community has an expectation of us to be spending a lot of money or time on these types of technologies. They expect us to be giving their kids a good education, and they just want to see that, you know, the kids are happy when they come to school, they're engaged. So I suppose from a parent point of view, there's been no point in time where there's been someone saying, hey, you haven't done this good enough, or the school down the road is doing something better, and why aren't you keeping pace with that? So we haven't had to navigate any difficult conversations around that yet. The big thing for us in Department of Education is navigating guidelines. So there are, there has been some guidelines produced by the Department of Education in terms of how to use these things, and some of that comes down to the filming of kids and child protection issues and the like. So I suppose what we do is just make sure that we're fitting in with policies and procedures as published by the governing body, which is the Department of Education. And finally, I guess the conduit between us and parents and the community often is our parents and citizens group. It's a small group of committed parents, and you know, we feed back to them when we through various things, through kids presenting to them and teachers and staff talking to them on the nights that they come in. You know, just like the rest of our community, they're incredibly supportive of what we do, and they love what we do. Like the stuff that we've been doing the last 2 years with our Nexus program has got kids that are out of zone coming to our schools on transition nights and saying, well, I want to know more about this. And so I think that, you know, certainly, very supportive, and not a lot of difficult stuff to navigate there at this stage, Pradeep, apart from, you know, fitting in with department expectations and guidelines.
Man, I must get you on board as a project manager, because stakeholder management is one of the key skills required. So over to you, Michael B.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I think that was just covered beautifully, just like you just said, Pradeep. Maybe the only thing I would add is I think that we've possibly, again, if I go back and think about where I was maybe 20 years ago when I started sort of working with technology, I think we might have come to the point where we have parents who themselves have grown up with a fair bit of technology in their hands. And I think they understand, the environment that our students are going to be going into, and they understand the skills that they need, both from a social and empathetic and a technical, mindset going into the future. So I think when they see us, we obviously do a lot of, everything that that was just mentioned before, and I think that when teachers see where we're trying to take the students with this technology, I think they understand the why behind it. And again, that's explained through newsletters, we have a blog as well that we produce, and it gives those different stakeholders an insight into what's happening inside the school.
Okay, thank you. And Michael M., what do you see when you work across different schools?
I haven't seen anything negative yet. Really, I haven't. I've only seen positivity, willingness, openness. It's been great. I mean, there's been maybe just a little bit of hesitation around, well, what's this going to cost? How much time is it going to take to learn this? Those kinds of things. Is it possible that it could, not be as reliable, just coming to the crunch in the middle of the classroom. But those are all things that, through trial and error, you just test it, do something small, move on, and then learn. And as Grant was saying earlier, take those small steps first, and you'll see that it just becomes so much easier and so much better. And yeah, as I say, I've seen nothing but positivity around it, and just questions, investigate. Make sure you ask the right questions. Security is a major thing. We need to be very careful about that. But apart from that, guys, just jump in.
Absolutely fabulous. Now, I would like to now close the session as we are almost nearing about 1 hour, 30 minutes. But I have really certainly enjoyed the discussion. And to all my fellow attendees and listeners, this is a journey that we have kickstarted today in looking at it from a grassroots level, looking at how do you get started and getting an educator to present their perspectives. And to build a community around where people, like, for example, maybe Grant can look at what content is being created at Michael B's place, and maybe they two can collaborate. And just imagine we've got so many schools across Australia collaborating with New Zealand, or for the rest of the world, Asia Pacific, and so on and so forth. So keep your eyes and ears out, looking out for the next session, which is going to be in middle of September. And we will present another set of educators, but we will continue to involve Michael B. and Grant as we build the community. So thank you once again, and enjoy your evening, afternoon, night, or whatever it is in your part of the world, and look forward to catching up with you again in building this community. Take care. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.